President Muhammadu Buhari is livid over the 317 million litres of contaminated petrol in circulation, which has caused untold damage to motor vehicles nationwide. According to news reports in This Day, a Rise News sister publication, the president was said to have ordered that the chief executive officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency, NMDPRA, Farouk Ahmed, should be queried immediately. Buhari, who was said to be visibly angry over the situation, leading to the return of long fuel queues in parts of the country, instructed that the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipre Silva, ask Ahmed to explain how petrol with high methanol content got into Nigeria. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, under the Direct Sale, Direct Purchase Agreement, arrangement, otherwise known as crude oil swaps, allocates crude oil to major oil traders such as Trafigura, Acadia, Sahara Energy, Vitol, Owando, and others, who in return import petrol on behalf of NNPC. However, it has always been the responsibility of the NMDPRA, the successor agency of the DPR's midstream and downstream regulatory functions, to test all petroleum products that arrive in the country at its laboratories before they are dispensed to oil marketers. Now joining us to provide more insight into how and why petrol that does not meet regulatory specifications continues to make its way to fuel stations is Bala Zaka, a petroleum engineer and an oil and gas analyst. Good morning, Mr. Zaka, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Well, let me ask.
Thank you, sir.
Let me ask, why does this always happen? Because it's not the first time that we have had this issue. We're told, yes, NNPC is in transition, but the Department of Petroleum Resources had this situation in the past. And now is the midstream and upstream, midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authority that is having the same issue. Why is this always the case? Is it a question of negligence or corruption or what?
Well, I want to start by appreciating Mr. President and the concerns that he expressed, because what happened is not good for the image of Nigeria. Because as I speak to you, let's not forget that a Nigerian has been superintending over the biggest crude oil cartel in the world called OPEC. And the person that has been the Secretary General for probably the past 8 years has been a Nigerian, His Excellency Alhaji Barikindo. From only that angle, this is a national disgrace. But we also have to appreciate our president for responding and giving that directive. You asked a pertinent question, and you said, why should such a thing happen? As far as I'm concerned, there may be 1,001 control mechanisms, but as far as I'm concerned, the three principal control mechanisms failed. The first one is the preventive control mechanism, the detective control mechanism, and the corrective control mechanism, and I will explain them. When you talk about a preventive control mechanism, what we are saying is this: prevent that thing from even happening in the first place. So if the preventive control mechanisms have been in place, that whatever you call it, whether dirty fuel or adulterated fuel, should have been prevented from leaving the point of loading and heading towards Nigeria. So to that extent, at the point of prevention, the preventive mechanism failed. So having beaten the preventive mechanism and reached Nigeria, the detective control mechanisms should have detected that the wrong fuel beat the preventive control mechanism and got to Nigeria even before discharge. So what happened was the detective control mechanism also failed, and the dirty fuel or adulterated fuel was able to get itself into Nigeria. So because we couldn't detect it, what also happened was it went through, permeated Nigeria's fabric, in this case, probably the discharging points that we technically call filling stations or the depots. And at that point again, because we couldn't detect it, the detection mechanism failed, it was able to cause harm, which everybody is analyzing in Naira and Kobo and whatever. And another thing again, even the corrective mechanisms fail. Because after we couldn't prevent it from coming in, we didn't detect it. Then when it started causing the harm, we were supposed to have corrected it. And at that point again, the correction mechanism failed. And that was why people started crying. Unfortunately again, the regulatory authority or those concerned took more than probably 48 hours to give explanation. So I just want to say all the control mechanisms failed.
So let me start at the point of those control mechanisms and, preventive measures. I'm going to just slightly redact a message that I got from a highly placed industry insider who will remain nameless, obviously. I'm not going to name any names. But this is what he said. There's a particular trader in a company, which I cannot name, that sold up to 9 cargoes of methanol containing up to 8% of methanol, which normally in Europe should not exceed 2 to 3%. Methanol trades at $400 per ton cheaper than gasoline, which is why he blended so much methanol into the gasoline. And this trader sold cargoes to other companies, and he goes on to name those companies, who import gasoline into Nigeria under the DSDP contract with NMPC. All the cargoes loaded in Rotterdam and were imported into Nigeria by taking advantage of a loophole in Nigerian stated gasoline specifications, which did not include a precise level of methanol. Methanol at high levels is toxic when it comes into contact with water, which is often found in storage tanks on shore and goes black and is corrosive. We have facilities capable of testing for methanol in Nigeria, but as it's not stated in our gasoline specification, this loophole should be tightened, and that company should be sanctioned for taking advantage. That company now wants to charge those companies and other importers a lot of money to take back that cargo, because contractually, they tell these companies that Nigeria does not have a methanol specification. And then I'm now looking at something, a document titled Appendix 1, PMS Current Specification, which specifies properties like appearance, color, free water, suspended matter, specific gravity at 15 degrees Celsius. And right at the bottom there, it says ethanol nil. So this is NMPC COMD reacting to this PMS cargoes containing methanol. So they've put different companies on notice that PMS deliveries with methanol will not be accepted going forward. The load port quality certificate should show methanol content as nil. So what is your take on those preventative measures that were not taken, that loophole that's been alleged, and now the efforts made to course correct in the view of this disaster that's happening?
Well, as outsiders, we are not going to be fair if we start giving reasons. But we know, like we all agreed, or we are likely to agree, the control mechanisms failed. It couldn't be prevented from even leaving the point of loading offshore. We couldn't detect it using our laboratory equipment or whatever mechanisms we have. Even when it started causing harm, we couldn't detect. So to be fair to the regulatory authorities, we will leave them to come up with their investigation. But, by the time they come up with their investigation results, we will be able to make comments. But I also wouldn't want to be very careful. But I wouldn't also be immodest if I say there was negligence and irresponsibility.
Okay. Well, very quickly, you've talked about irresponsibility. But what do you think of the idea of this direct sale, direct purchase arrangement or crude oil swap that Nigeria, through the NMPC has been working on? I thought it was supposed to have, a shelf life, but it looks like it has become a very permanent, method, because all of this has happened under this direct sale, direct purchase. Do you think that's the problem? And do you think that there is a problem with specifications, as alleged?
First of all, when you talk about direct sales and direct purchase, such arrangements are supposed to be ad hoc arrangements, because everywhere you go, people can come across their difficult moments. And when you come across difficult moments, whether in health, in finance, in education, you resort to something to make sure you reduce the pain, whether it's health pain, economic pain, social pain, or political pain. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, direct sale, direct purchase is supposed to be something like an ad hoc arrangement. Instead of allowing anxiety within the system, you quickly have an agreement like that in place for difficult moments. But another thing I want to point out is this. What happened also clearly showed that Nigeria didn't have what we call strategic reserve. Because if you were to have a strategic reserve, with what happened, and we were able to detect, even after the preventive control measures have failed, we were supposed to detect, and once you detect, you halt it from being discharged to citizens or to the outlets, and you now release your strategic reserve. So what has happened now has technically revealed also that strategic reserve probably existed on paper.
Right. What is your take on the conspiracy theory being espoused by the leadership of the Nigerian labor unions, talking about how this fuel scarcity is a way of introducing subsidy removal through the back door?
Well, unfortunately, I'm somebody whose thinking has always been at resonance reasonably with the masses. But in this context, I am probably at variance with NLC. As far as I'm concerned, it has nothing to do with subsidy removal. But you see, there is one big mistake that a lot of people have been doing. But I don't blame them. I actually blame some of the technocrats in Nigeria. I have defined subsidy, but this is subsidy in my own way. Subsidy is a globally accepted economic pain cushioning concept. And that simply means even if some subsidy is not working in Nigeria, that does not invalidate the global definition and acceptability of subsidy. But I want to also say something, and I may be at variance with so many people, you know, or so many contributors or opinion minds. As far as I am concerned, the only or one of the principal reasons for the existence of government at all is the provision of subsidy for her citizens. Please, before I get hanged, let me explain. The only reason why we have soldiers, army, navy, air force, civil defense, LASMA and the rest, and custom and the rest, is because the government of a country wants to provide subsidy in the area of security. The only reason why we have road construction by government, trunk A, trunk B, trunk C, and trunk whatever, is because government wants to provide subsidy on transportation. The reason why you have public hospitals is because government wants to provide subsidy in the areas of health. The reason why you have public schools, primary school, secondary school, and university, is because government wants to provide subsidy in education. So when we're even talking about the white products or distillates, it's because we want government to provide subsidy in the area of energy. And the reason why we say this is because by the time government provides subsidy for her citizens, the next thing the government will expect is whether you're talking about individual or corporate citizens, they are now supposed to be responsible, embark on activities that will lead to the aggregate growth of the economy. Then responsible citizens will not stay there. They will not stop there. They will now try to comply with their civic responsibilities of paying taxes and other levies. And that is how you grow economies. Government don't exist as businessmen. They are supposed to make sure they provide goods and services. And that's why I want to ask this question. If China has state-owned refineries. Saudi Arabia has. Brazil has. Malaysia has. Even troubled Libya, Iran, Iraq, and the rest have. Are we saying the economists and the government and the leaders of those countries are fools? Because Nigeria doesn't even have functional refineries. And if those countries and their leaders and their economies are not on the wrong track and they are not fools, for heaven's sake, who is the fool here? You know, there are so many things that have been happening in Nigeria, and as I speak to you, I personally, and some of you that are energy journalists also, know some Nigerians that are working in refineries outside here, in refineries offshore. Some of us speak to them every day. We speak to ourselves. Nobody can explain why basic and elementary chemistry of boiling crude, fractional distillation towers, distillation column, and the principle of differentials in temperature is not working in Nigeria. Because at a given temperature, LPG, cooking gas, will go to one way, petrol go your way, at another temperature, diesel go this way, bitumen. That is the principle. I am challenging any process engineer, petroleum engineer, chemical engineer, or even a mechanical engineer to tell me that refining of crude oil is more complex than heart surgery, kidney transplant, or even cesarean section operation. It's not. It's not. It's basic chemistry. Every other thing you see is cosmetic.
Well, let me ask you. You talked about the processes involved and how the ball was dropped along the chain. Should there be sanctions? And who should be sanctioned? Beyond the query that we're told the president has directed should be issued to the head of the authority in charge of Midstream and Downstream.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, every reprimand, every punishment that is deemed necessary should be handed over, or should be meted, or should be administered. Because at the beginning of this discussion, like I said, the biggest crude oil cartel in the whole world on planet Earth is called Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. And the person that has been superintending in the past or in the last 8 years has been a Nigerian. Even from that angle, you will know that even if it is not shown, he is probably being mocked. These are simple things. Why should you be superintending on a cartel like that can shake the global energy system? And in your country, basic refining, basic provision of white products that we technically call distillates is not possible. And like we will also continue to explain, the reason why you see there is this mad rush for petrol or diesel is because we don't have electricity. You're talking about a country of about 200 million citizens. In addition to being 200 million citizens, you have strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity. Whether people accept it or not, we are going to recourse to other ways of provision of energy to help ourselves. And I heard people saying, okay, if you deregulate the downstream, everything will work. Okay, diesel has been deregulated. When diesel was deregulated, the price was jacked up to 120 naira to $1. I mean, to a barrel. To a liter, 120 naira per liter. As at yesterday, diesel was 400 naira per liter. And with due respect, as I'm speaking to you now, your own sector belongs to what we call strategic commercial sector. If one goes to the back of your studios, I will not be surprised if one sees 3, 4, or 5 generators running on diesel. If you go to the hotel, you are likely to see 4, 5 generators running on diesel. If you go to a hospital, you are likely to see 3 or 4 or 5 generators running on diesel, how do you expect people to break even? And in the case of a place like hospital, assuming the hospital is a 200-bed capacity hospital, do you know that even if they have only 10 patients, they will be forced to run generator throughout the night? Or if you go to probably a 100-capacity hotel and they have just 10 guests, do you know that they will be forced to run that generator throughout the night? So who say they are breaking even? Who said they are breaking even? Why are we lying to ourselves? We lie on the petroleum industry bill that later became an act and said investors will come. Where are the investors? I'm waiting to be challenged by anybody. Investors are not coming. As we are speaking also, as I speak to you now, one will expect that now that, okay, when you talk about international business or crude oil, the benchmarkers are the West Texas Intermediate, WTI. The other marker is the Brent, and Nigeria's Bonny Light is tied to the Brent as a reference marker. As we speak now, the Brent is above $90 per barrel. But in Nigeria, do you know that we have not even been able to produce to meet up with our OPEC quota? Not to talk of even producing to meet up with our production, budget production value, to meet up, generate revenue, and breach budget deficit. As I speak to you now, in the whole of Nigeria, quote me, in the whole of Nigeria, we have less than 10 active drilling rigs. From land, by the time you look at the rigs on the land, the swamp or shallow waters, and the deep waters. And if you don't have enough drilling rigs, how can you produce? And if you are not producing, something must be the reason. Investors are suffering from business climate hostilities. So enough of all this zigzag movement. And one thing people, when I hear people from government quarters trying to lie, you can't lie, because almost all the countries have their embassies here, and organized investors, foreigners, will always pass through their consulate or embassies to brief them. Their ambassadors are here, they know the things that are going on. Nigeria, as far as the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry is concerned, has been on the wrong trajectory. We need to recalibrate our steps and come back.
I'm sure everybody who's listening to you wants to know, how long do you think or do you hope that this situation might linger for? There have been efforts made to arrest it, but realistically speaking, when are the fuel lines, the fuel queues going to disappear? In less than a minute, please. We're running out of time.
Well, to be honest, it will be difficult, because it's just like you pouring something like a gamalin in those days into the river. You should expect that it will kill as many aquatic lives as possible. How you will block it, how you will halt it, one wouldn't know. But one thing is this: if we have anything at all in our strategic reserve, that should be released. Then for the retail outlets where some of these products have been detected, they should halt sales until we are able to carry out real lab analysis to see what we can do. And even the way and manner the contaminated or adulterated petrol will be taken care of needs to be done with due diligence and real competence.
Well, we'd like to thank you very much, Engineer Bala Zaka, for joining us and shedding light on something that is of great concern to all of us as Nigerians and perhaps also the international community. Thank you very much indeed.